This Sunday, we begin our adult study on the letter of Paul to Titus. Titus is first mentioned by Paul in his letter to the Galatians when he speaks about how Titus and Barnabas had been his companions, possibly for those 14 years while Paul was sorting through his conversion experience on the road to Damascus and learning about Christ, and before he kind of makes his public appearance and begins to plant churches and proclaim the gospel. And as that happens across Paul's ministry, there's a church in particular in Crete, which is an island of Cretans, which we'll hear about more about that in the first chapter this Sunday. But interesting about Titus is that he's referred to in such tender terms. Paul again talks to him, refers to him as his brother in the faith. He makes the point of saying that, especially in his letter to Galatians, that Titus, even after hearing all the arguments of the people who had kind of come into the church and tried to corrupt the faith, Titus, even after hearing all that, refused to be circumcised, which is a big deal, considering all the pressure that had been put on early Christians to conform to things that were not of Jesus. And then he refers to Titus again in 2 Corinthians 8 when he talks about Titus as his partner and fellow worker in the gospel. And so no wonder that he sends this letter to Titus as he sends him to the island of Crete to kind of establish order and to bring things back into right functioning. The church there had become somewhat dysfunctional. At least we can assume that from the things that Paul instructs Titus to address as he sends him there. Verse 5, it says that for this reason, Titus, I left you in Crete that you would set in order what remains and appoint elders in every city as I directed you. And then he goes on in these 46 verses to explain the roles of some of the church overseers. He talks about the ministry of the young and the old, the women and the men in the church there. And then finally, in general, just a letter about just godly living, just a section about just what it means to live out the Christian faith. In chapter 1 especially, we're going to look at the last verse in that, in verse 16, where Paul says, they profess to know God, but by their deeds they deny him, being detestable and disobedient and worthless for any good deed. So this Sunday, we're going to be taking a look at that. What does it mean to know God or profess to know God, yet deny him with our deeds, and how that hits close to home, I think, for all of us at times. We can be such people that pay lip service to the God of our salvation. And so this correction that Titus is charged with when he goes to Crete and he begins to bring order, restore order back to the early church is still a timely message for us today. So I hope you can be there and be a part of our study on Titus, or look at what Paul had to address in that day, and again, how that still applies today, and the word of God that continues to bring hope and correction and restoration to his body, his church. And so hope to see you Sunday.